Dan, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect.
How we doing?
Awesome.
Excited to have you join. I'll
Thanks.
uh I'll have you, Dan, just give a quick intro. How long you been at Redo? What do you head up? And then we'll jump into the handful of questions that we've prepped for you.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Dan Visser. I'm a GM at Redo. Right now, I'm currently over reverse logistics, which includes everything beyond the software. So managing returns, refurbishing returns, refulfilling returns, liquidating returns. We're trying to bring even more value to merchants beyond the software, and that's what I'm heading up right now.
Amazing. Dan has how long you been here, Dan?
Um, a little over a year, I think maybe a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Dan's been through a lot of the product growth, seen a lot of changes on what Redo's doing, talked with thousands of merchants most likely at this point, and so has kind of led him into figuring out everything post return, which has been a huge pain point for a lot of merchants. And so excited to dive in today on what Dan has been building, why he's been building it. And so Dan, in a lot of the conversations that you've been having with merchants, talk us through some of the pain points or what kind of led you into building out reverse logistics.
Yeah, you're right. I have talked to thousands of merchants. I think when I initially came on at Redo, I was launching a product. Well, I was working on like a warranties product and built out like a repairs functionality. And I saw how valuable that was to merchants who fixed stuff. And not every merchant does that, but a lot of merchants have durable types of goods will fix stuff as part of their warranty policy. And I just saw like the pain that we were helping solve there in their process and started to just like poke on that a little bit more and ask merchants like, after the return happens through redo, then what happens? Like, what do you do with the stuff? Like, where does the stuff go? And what I we discovered is while e-commerce merchants need to offer returns policy to reduce hesitation at checkout, and increase conversion, most of them, around 50% of them, don't have a structured returns process once the item gets back. In other words, merchants spend a ton of time crafting return policy, putting in all the nuance and details into what can be returned and when it can be returned. But there's a large, like, customer segment or merchant segment that just doesn't know what to do and they get overwhelmed with the stuff or they don't have time to manage the stuff and open the package and refulfill it or liquidate it or whatnot. And so as we were talking to merchants about that and really trying to understand the pain beyond the software, we notice how big of an opportunity there is to pair our software with the physical management of the return goods.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense, right? You streamline the process for returns, you optimize for exchanges, you're still going to end up getting returns and products returned to your warehouse. More often than not, it gets tucked away in a corner. It becomes next month's problem, and then it becomes next month's problem again on what are we going to do with this product that's been returned to us and we're not sure what to do. And so that back half of the return seems to continue to come up in conversations, it sounds like. So talk us through a little bit then, what next? Like, you saw this pain, you saw these merchants not really knowing what to do with that product that's just sitting in the corner of the warehouse. So you jumped in and built what you built. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So what we did is we have a couple different motions going right now, all within the what we're calling the redo managed return space. So what we've done is where it makes sense for the merchant and where and what I mean by that is there is like a sizable number of merchants at Redo that have awesome processes in place that have the ability and the wherewithal and the resources to take the item back, refurbish it, get it back in stock, and refulfill it. And so what we're doing is we're saying like, hey, for the merchants that don't have a good process in place or just don't want to worry about it at all. Maybe they do have a good process in place, but they want to spend their time thinking about sales instead of reverse logistics. We've introduced a redo managed returns. It works like this: based on the customer, their margins, their size, we will take the item back. We will then send it on one of two paths. If it makes sense to refurbish the item and get it refulfilled, we will take it through that path, steam, pack it, put it back in our warehouse where we will then tap into their OMS and be a fulfillment center. If an order comes through for one of those items, we take priority and refulfill the item for it. If the item should not be refulfilled, and there's, again, every merchant is different, and there's cases for or against refulfilling, for or against liquidating. But if it can't be refulfilled, we can then send it on one of two paths. We can just batch up the items, send them back to the merchant, and they can dispose of them however they want. Or we can take it, and we've spun up a liquidation process, which includes selling the items either in a brick and mortar store, selling direct to a liquidator, like a bulk liquidator. Think of like TJ Maxx or that type of a buyer. We have really cool tools to help the merchants get their product on eBay or Poshmark if they want to do something like that, or we can funnel it direct to donation or destroy the product for the merchant.
It's incredible. So really any option that a merchant wants to elect on what to do with that product, you've built a way for us to be able to facilitate that for them.
Exactly. Yep. And again, the part of the reason I've learned that merchants get analysis paralysis when determining what to do with their returns is because there's different solutions for different merchants. There's also different solutions for different products. And so what we do is we try to take more of a consultative approach, look at their SKUs, look at their return rates by product, and set up kind of a game plan for them to, maybe for certain products it doesn't even make sense to refurbish, and we'll send those products straight to liquidation or back to the merchant if they want to do that. Or if it does make sense, send it refulfillment route. So yes, we have the process, the infrastructure, the teams in place to manage it all, but it starts with just understanding the merchant and their return policies and what does or doesn't make sense based on their scenario and their margin profiles.
Yeah. Do you have an example top of mind of a merchant that has come to you or you've been able to work with directly to solve the issue of the leftover inventory that's sitting in the corner of the warehouse?
Yes. Well, and you're introducing kind of a new pain, which is excess inventory,
Yeah.
which sometimes can incorporate returns that get thrown in the corner. But yes, as far as liquidation, first thing that comes to mind, a merchant that had been sitting on about 30,000 MSRP worth of excess inventory, and some of which were returns. It had been sitting in their warehouse for 5 years, literally since COVID. They kind of got analysis paralysis. It was enough that they didn't want to just destroy it, but they didn't know what to do with it, and rightfully so, they weren't spending a ton of brain power determining what to do. I had reached out to them, we put together a plan, and so far through our different liquidation motions, we've sold through near 100% of the items that we took on for them. So it's an interesting point, though. One of the challenges with liquidation is sometimes merchants will get emotionally attached to their returns or inventory, and they'll see an item that's maybe originally MSRP'd for $100, and in their mind think that it's still worth $100, even though fashions have changed, styles have changed, and new technologies have been released. And so with this merchant, we went through the game plan. We were able to recoup around 35% of the MSRP for them after diagnosing the problem and kind of resetting expectations on what success looked like for their excess inventory and returns.
Yeah. And that goes into what you were talking about previously as well, where I know you have kind of a matrix that you work people through on what do the margins look like per product, how long have you been sitting on it, just all the different variables that go into it to make sure that it's a win for the customer. Yeah, if you could take a second, just kind of walk through visually how you go through that, because that's still a big win for the merchant, even though it might not be that 100% recoup that they, in an ideal state, would like to recover, but it's still a win. And kind of walk us through how you get to that.
Totally. Yeah. It usually looks like this. Merchants are big and small, and merchants have low or high margins, and that's how I bucket merchants when we're talking about it. And where merchants are dealing with like medium to low margins, and in apparel, I would say that's anything say below 40%, like the 20 to 30% range, I would classify as in like the medium to low margin profile. Every dollar matters, or every dollar lost is felt a little more deeply than a merchant who's maybe operating on 50, 60, 70% margins. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll look at like what their margin profile is directionally. It's not like we need to jump into their books or anything like that, because where again they have lower margins, then a refulfillment probably makes more sense. Why? Because you're able to recover a little bit more with refulfillment. Refulfillment is taking the item that was returned, making it like new, and then getting it back on the shelf so that it can be sold at full price again. It takes a lot of work, but it recovers more and it helps those merchants out. Um, there are some downsides to it, like it costs money. You have to pay per refulfillment. And there is a little bit of risk to the brand that when it's refulfilled, if the returned item had dog hair on it, maybe a piece of dog hair was missed when it was being rolled or whatnot. But again, it helps improve the margin profile, which is arguably more important for the low margin business. And then another like qualitative aspect here is it's a support sustainability. There's a lot of uh, I guess, visibility into the world of returns and re-commerce in general, and how much waste can occur with merchants that just chuck their stuff. And by refulfilling, you can kind of project or align your values with more of a sustainable, environmentally and socially responsible culture mindset. So again, low margins, then we'd say, hey, let's maybe look at a refulfillment or a returns process. Now, on the other side, high margins, where a return doesn't really impact your net income as much. There, what we typically like to look at is let's just get it liquidated for you. Let's just get, you're not into this product that much. You spent little relative to the amount you got. Let's just try to get your costs back, and you can get that working capital and put it back into motion quicker. Downsides there are, as I was bringing up, the recovery rate is usually a little bit lower. It depends on the product and the brand, but you're looking anywhere between 10 on the low end to 50% of MSRP on the high end liquidation. Another thing that makes brands uncomfortable sometimes at the thought of liquidation is the loss of brand control. Come up with like an omnichannel approach to help brands liquidate based on what they're comfortable with. But again, high margins, let's liquidate, let's just get the cogs out of the product back quick, and then you can get operating. But then we start to like dial in a little bit more based on the size of the merchant. So if you're low margin, big merchant, we might start to dissect, like I was saying, the products, and let's try to go product by product. And are there certain products that are driving the overall lower margin that we just should focus on refurbishing or refulfilling rather than going a liquidation route? And then same on the high margin profile, is the bigger the merchant is, the more we like to get into product to product to see if maybe it's just one thing causing the high margins and whatnot. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. And I think it's a very valuable exercise to do when you're trying to think through what to do with the inventory, right? And from my understanding and what I've talked to people about, it's like it's always lingering in the back of your mind as something that needs to be done. But like we said earlier, it seems to always be just next month's problem because things continue to come up that feel more urgent. And so it's something that becomes a problem that's a perpetual problem that just needs to be solved. And so being able to just kind of go through and get it all figured out and then have a plan in place and a system is a big win. So very, very important. So I guess the next question for you, Dan, that was a great example of kind of walking through how you walk through things and an exercise that merchants themselves could probably also go through. And you've built out, as you've talked today, so many different things, so many different avenues for people to be able to leverage to help them solve the reverse logistics issue. Give me like one or two pieces of that have been the most impactful for brands or that people are mostly loving.
So one or two products that we've rolled out that brands are loving.
Yeah, or like a feature or just something very specific.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is it's not really like a tech product, but around 4 months ago, we launched an outlet store, a brick and mortar location. As we were talking through and kind of like consulting customers or merchants on what they should do with their returns, one thing that came up over and over again was the hesitancy to liquidate things through any sort of online channel. So it doesn't matter if it's like images, like make it you modify the images so it can't be traced back to the original website or whatnot. They just don't want it online at all. So in response, but if they don't want it online, but they want it liquidated, they want money out of it. So in response, we launched a brick and mortar location where we'll take returns and excess inventory in, put it up for sale. Again, it's not found online at all. It might take a little bit longer to liquidate than some sort of online channel, but that has been wildly popular. In fact, we're at the point where we've kind of had to pause a little bit the amount of inventory we're taking on just because we had a pretty overwhelming response to that. Additionally, what we've launched is the ability for merchants to, if it makes sense, to kind of market their own returns or excess inventory on like a Poshmark or an eBay. So again, one of the big hesitancies merchants have with liquidating their excess inventory returns is that it would do, if it's found online, it will dilute their brand. And that can make that it can be true if it's found on like a Shopify store that is calling out the brand name here and there. But there's a little less hesitancy. There's still hesitancy, a little less hesitancy if the items are put on like a peer-to-peer marketplace like eBay or Poshmark, where you're using more general descriptions of the item. It's or like a Facebook marketplace, for example. And so we've found like a smaller profile merchants that are like keen to do something like that, where they don't want to do some sort of branded resale program on their website. They'd rather just push it straight to eBay or push it straight to the Poshmark. And with a click of the button, it's actually like 2 clicks of the button, they can take the inventory that's in their Shopify store and immediately create a listing with just a couple clicks there.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, final question for you, Dan. What are you building now that's most exciting? Like as you look at what's going to happen in the future, how are you building for the future?
Yeah. What we're building is a end-to-end solution so merchants can completely offboard returns to Redo. And again, we've got best-in-class software. We're helping merchants manage the returns that manage the customer queries that come through, create the labels that come through, but we're doing everything to make as customized and as optimized of a returns process shipment, post-return shipment as we can. So what that means for the merchant, what's on the horizon, like instant manifesting of goods. So again, we talked about the free liquidation sources we have right now, the outlet store. We have direct liquidation with bulk buyers, and we also have these peer-to-peer sites like Poshmark or eBay they can post on. Often merchants will need, so with the returns, we've got a seamless 2-click response to get those items liquidated through those channels. But we've also discovered merchants that have piles and piles and piles of stuff that are no longer in their inventory, and we've got really cool tools to help them take pictures and instantly manifest those items so those postings can be made. Additionally, we've built or we're building an AI agent that we're calling Houston that can look at your returns and give you a pretty predictable estimate on what you would recover through those 3 different channels to help inform the merchant on whether or not we should try to refulfill or liquidate. So again, what I was talking about earlier is Dan Visser talking to the merchant saying like, hey, let's do some math, let's look at spreadsheets, and let's say what's on the horizon. It's AI doing what I've been doing manually and looking at the returns and just saying, hey, here is an efficient frontier of returns, either through refulfillment or liquidation, and AI will make all the decisions for us. No, I would just say like returns suck. Like they're really hard to manage, and we're here to help. So excited to talk to anyone and everyone about returns. Again, even if it means making your own team internally more efficient, we're building the tools to do it ourselves, but you're not alone in the journey. We're here to help talk you through it and find solutions to make your life less stressful and more focused on driving revenue.